A fundraiser is planned later this year for an organization that helps children and teens break the cycle of inequality. To tell us about the work of Someone Else's Child and the December benefit being headlined by Peter Wolf is the organization's managing director, Mike Christian. Thank you very much for being with us, Mike.
Thank you.
Mike, before we talk about your programs, I want to have you talk about the background that you and your wife brought to this organization. I see a lot of volunteering in your past. So what's the connection?
Well, the foundation actually, Someone Else's Child, was established by my wife over 20 years ago. It was premised on the fact that underserved kids are, often viewed as someone else's child, but we look at it as they're maybe someone else's child, but they're not someone else's problem. And it's really the community's responsibility to take care of our kids in need. And that was the original premise for the organization. And, as a result of having someone else's child, we obviously have partnered with a lot of other nonprofits. We've worked within the community. And so those types of partnerships and collaborations have led to all of the volunteer work that you see.
Well, there are many nonprofit community-based groups that serve these underserved communities. What's different about the way you do it?
I think it's really the collaborative nature of what we do. There's so many, you're exactly right. There's so many great programs out there, passionate people with a wonderful mission. They're often lacking funds, so certainly we're able to provide funds. We are a foundation at our core, and we've evolved into more of a working foundation where we have our own programs also, but really what we mostly do is work with other nonprofits. And so I think the need is exponentially great. It was great before. After post-COVID, it's even greater. And I think that that core aspect of being able to find programs that are additive to our mission and reflective of our mission is really the sweet spot for us.
Well, last year during the peak of the pandemic, there were young people who needed help in a different way. And a lot of the organizations serving them, they had to pivot as well. So how did that work out here in Boston?
Yeah, I think it was, if you look at summer camp, summer camp programs, places where teens work as counselors in training, anything that was community oriented, most of those programs were shut down. There couldn't be any physical interaction or minimal physical interaction. And I think a lot of them pivoted. A lot of them that we supported, worked towards more of a remote type of program, and yet we're still able to give back to the community. Maybe it was reading to older people, or trying to have Zoom meetings with younger people in lieu of having an in-person camp, delivering food. In the case of the Thompson Island, their green ambassadors went around their neighborhoods and looked at green spaces and said, how can we come up with plans to make that more effective for people in our neighborhood once the pandemic's over? So those are just a few examples.
What I'm hearing in this mix is that these are opportunities for young people to take initiative. Is that part of what you're driving at?
Yes, for sure. I think with teens in particular, and maybe even moving into young adults, our spectrum of kids that we serve has broadened over the years, because we think we can be impactful with the older teens and the young adults. But most of those kids, they have to work. They have to contribute to the family income, and if they're not getting paid internships or being able to do things, follow their passion, maybe their academic pursuit, then they just go work at a McDonald's. And so as an example, and so we established some programs, internship programs that, force them to, or encourage them to look into their communities, see where the need was, establish a program, really create that program from scratch, and then we provided the funding for paid internship for them to pursue that type of a program.
I'm interested in some of the programs you've supported in recent years, and there are a number of musical programs. They're challenging, but it also looks as if you're giving young people a chance to get exposed to something that they're probably not going to pick up on in school.
Yeah, I think that's right. I mean, you can think about a few of the programs, examples, Boston Music Project, which is at the Josiah Quincy School. It's been there for a long time, teaches teaches young children and into middle school age children, how to play instruments. But they do it with a methodology that's a little more unique. They're serving a community that sometimes those children just wouldn't have an opportunity to do that. The Bach Center, I know you're familiar with that. You just recently interviewed Joe Spalding. They have a wonderful education program that's not that well known. They're known for the Wang Theater primarily, and having a wonderful theater and being able to put on music shows and drama and plays. But their outreach program to both in-school programs in the Boston Public Schools and for teens is spectacular. We've been able to partner with them on many of those programs, and it's using music and the arts really to help them express themselves and create a fuller experience, learning experience, not just what they would learn in school.
I know some musicians are good at math, but on the other hand, when you have kids in these programs, you might have students who struggle with math or literacy. They come into a music program and they flourish. What does that do with the rest of their learning?
I think that's a good question. I think, oftentimes when a student struggles in a particular subject, like, say STEM, math, science, and the engineering aspect of it, or even in literacy, it's not necessarily because they struggle in that particular subject. They may not be able to read well, they may have dyslexia, there may be other issues that are impacting their ability to learn. And those are the types of things that I think some of these programs, they ferret that out, and they're able to really address the root causes for a lack of learning, because it's across the whole spectrum, and every child can improve and learn if we just address the right issue.
One of the other things that makes your organization stand out is that you're not just local, you're very global. Why is that?
Well, when we look at being global, it's really primarily Africa, and it was really almost a personal reason. My oldest daughter had worked in Africa for many years and said, the need's great in the United States. You ought to see here in Africa, and maybe there's some things you could do. And so we started with a couple of small programs, one in Kenya, in Nairobi, Kenya, that was similar to, say, the Bach program, where it was teaching arts and music and ways for the children in some of those really desperate areas of Nairobi to express themselves more and be empowered in a way that they'd never been exposed to before. So that was really the foundation of getting into Africa. And then we do some work with MIT, and they have referred us to other organizations. So we've expanded the scope. The mission's the same. It's literacy, education, economic justice. So it's just doing it through organizations. Again, it's collaborative in some of those African countries.
I want to ask you about the benefit happening later this year. It's headlined by Peter Wolf. I happened to see him when I was a teenager in Boston, enjoyed it quite a bit. But for people who don't go back that far, who is this?
Peter Wolf. Oh, he's an iconic musician, and I'm a big music fan, so I love Peter Wolf. The fact that it came together with Peter being the headliner was spectacular from my own personal perspective. Everybody probably knows him from the Jay Giles Band, but he's done a lot of other things. He's put out many solo albums, which are quite rich, and maybe not in the style, the harder rock style of the Jay Giles Band, but he's a consummate musician. He's got a great appreciation for the legacy of music. You can see it in some of his writings, and when he plays at a concert, he's got a spectacular band that's been together for a long time. So very tight, very great with the arrangements, and he puts on a show that kind of spans his whole career, and the guy's got a heck of a lot of energy. So it's an enjoyable experience. We're happy. We're thrilled that we were able to get him for our fundraiser at the Cabot Theater in Beverly, and it's the perfect venue for Peter Wolf.
I know this isn't happening until December, but we're going to be having this on Monday night. So by that time, tickets will be available, I assume?
Tickets are available. We have a limited number of tickets that we're selling exclusively through the fundraiser for someone else's child, and then they are available to the general public through all the usual outlets right now.
One other thing I need to ask you about, volunteering. It sounds like a lot of things that you're doing or supporting depend on volunteers. What about people who might be interested in that?
They can go to the website, www.someoneelseschild.org, and there's a section on there for volunteers that gives information and allows them to reach out to us, and we would love to accommodate them.
Well, thank you very much for taking the time to join us.
Chris, thank you. I really appreciate it.
That was Mike Christian from Someone Else's Child. We'll have more news in just a moment.